We looked at if-else, where basically there are two choices. Something is either true or not. But sometimes we have more than two choices. For instance, here, we are going to look to see if this integer x is greater than 0, less than 0, or equal to 0. So there are three possibilities here. So we can say if it's greater than 0, we're going to print the number is positive, else. Now else, I'm going to do more than one thing. So I've got the curly braces here. And here I'm going to write another if-else. If it's negative, print it's negative, else it's 0. Why do I not have to say else if x equals 0? Because if it was positive, I would have printed something else. The fact that I hit the else meant that it wasn't greater than 0. So now I'm going to check if it's less than 0. And if that fails, there's only one other possibility, and that is that it equals 0. So I do not have to say else if x equal 0. It is not wrong. It's just unnecessary. Here we have another example. We are going to get some input from the keyboard, and our user is going to give us a string, and this string is going to be either bike, car, or plane. And depending on which one of those three it is, we're going to output the cost. So I get a string, so I'm going to imagine that str contains now some value. I got it from the keyboard. So I have to check, does it equal bike? Well, I cannot use equal on strings. So I look up my string methods and I find there is a dot equals. And this is how I use it here. If my string dot equals bike, then I'm going to print something else. What's another possibility? Car. If it equals car, I print something else. I am going to hit a third equals. If it equals plane, I'm going to print something else. And the reason is I'm going to have a fourth possibility here, and that was that the user did not give me bike, car, or plane, but something else, in which case I'm going to print invalid input. So I'm dealing with four possibilities, and again, the fourth one does not need the if because it's the last remaining possibility. Now here I'm looking to see if it equals BIKE, all lowercase. I could use over here if string dot equals ignore case, in which case the user could have written uppercase B and then lowercase the rest of the word, or uppercase the whole of the word. It doesn't matter. It's completely ignoring case. As long as it's a B, I, K, and E, it will be counted as equal. If you don't want to use equals ignore case and you want to go with the strict equals, but you are allowing your user to give you, say, uppercase BIKE, then you should first make that string all lowercase by using two lowercase, and then you can see if it's equal to this string in lowercase. So two ways around this. Equals ignore case is the easier one of the two. We're going to collect a string from the keyboard. We're going to do something if the first character is a lower or uppercase Q. something else if it's a lower or uppercase W, something else if it's a lower or uppercase E, and something else if none of these. So when I'm worrying about lower or uppercase, I always change everything to lowercase. It's good to have them all the same case, then you don't have to worry about is it lower or upper. But I personally change them to lowercase because then when I'm typing, I don't have to hit a shift to get the uppercase character. It's just that little bit faster. So I change it all to lowercase and I look at the first character. And now I've got an if. So I'm going to look to see if my first character was a Q. And it's lowercase, I don't have to worry about anything else. And I'm just going to put a comment in here, was a Q. Well, then I have an else, and I have a begin and an end of my else. And I'm going to put a comment at the end brace. This is the end of the else for Q. And you'll note that here I put comments at the end of main. If I hover over that curly brace, I can see at the top there that beginning brace for main. And let me make this a bit bigger, scroll down a bit. If I hover over this one, I see that that's the beginning of the class here. So I have labeled my end braces, which helps. It just helps you to see what it is you're doing. So here I've got an if, else. This is the end of my else for was it a Q. So if it's a Q, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something else. What am I going to do? I'm going to check to see if it's a W. So within this else, this is why it's nested. Within this else, I've got another if. So if it's a W. And there's the begin and the end braces for my if. And if it wasn't, I've got the begin and the end for my else, and that was with a Q. So this is my end else for W. I am here within this part of my if statement. It was a W, so I do this, else it wasn't a W. That was W. Else it wasn't a W, in which case I'm going to look for an E. So within the else here, for the W, I'm going to look for the E. So if my character equal an E, do something, else do something. And that is my end else for E. So if I can look at my ifs here, if it's a Q, I'll be here. If it wasn't a Q, I'm in my else. And my else, you can see where the begin and end braces are for this else. So within here, I'm going to check to see if it was a W. If it is, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something else. So these two braces go with this if, and these 2 braces go with that else. So what was it we were going to do if it wasn't an E? If it wasn't an E, I was going to print or say something. So let's say system.out.println not Q, W, or E. Could do a little bit of copy and pasting here. So if I'm here, then it was an E. If I'm here, it was a W. And if I am here, it was a Q. Okay, let's run this and see if it works. I think I have to rename this because I renamed my file. Well, this name and my file name have to be the same thing. Okay, I don't have a prompt, so we're just sitting here looking for something. Some word. Quiet. So if we look at our output, it was a Q. Window was a W. Elephant was an E. And let's try something else. Zebra is neither of those. So when you're dealing with nested ifs, it's better to get all your structure there first before you start filling these things in. Typically, students try to work top down and then they miss or they lose the right braces. So try to remember to get your braces correct first. This is so much easier with a switch statement because then you don't have to worry about the braces and the else's. It's all done for you. You just have to worry about getting the breaks in the right place. So let's add a little bit to this. Let's do it again with a switch statement. So switch this character and we wanted to say what happens if it's an A, no, not an A Q. Something happens if it's a Q. Something happens if it's a W. And something else if it's an E. And the default if it's none of these. Okay, I can see up here, I can grab this. It was not any of those. Okay, so if it was an E, I want to say it was an E. And I need to remember the break. And then I can just copy and paste all of this for the W and the Q. And let me add a line here to say that we're now using a switch statement. And we can go through the same thing again. So quiet. So this is from the if else, and now from the switch statement, window, from the if and from the switch, elephant, again from both of them, and the last one was zebra. So I'm hoping that you can see how much easier it was with the switch statement. You don't have to worry about the curly braces. You don't have to worry about the else. It's the else that causes trouble. You just have to remember to stick those breaks in. It doesn't matter if you put a break after the default or not, because the default is the last statement in this switch statement. But much, much easier with a switch. I know that you are not comfortable with it, not used to using it, but once you get more familiar with it, you'll find it much easier.